It's Tuesday night, and we are here with another Get to Know Your Neighbor. I'm your host, Cameron Geesaman with Geesaman Homes, and tonight I'm sure to be wowed as our guest explains the process of making a knife by hand. As a quick reminder, each week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7:30, we will be doing a Facebook Live interview introducing you to amazing neighbors in Fishers, Indiana. We'd love if you would please, real quick, click the like button if you're watching, share on your page real quick. That way more people can see us, and comment with an emoji letting us know that you're here. It's the only way we actually can know that you're watching. So we do ask that you give us a thumbs up, an emoji on the comment. Before we get going, I want to say that our guest tonight has an unending amount of information in his brain. It amazes me every time I talk to him. Tonight, our guest is Aric Geesaman. He is an artisan bladesmith. I love how we call him that, an artisan bladesmith, and the owner and creator of Ash Blæds. Yes, you might have noticed that his last name is Geesaman, and yes, he is my brother-in-law. Aric also grew up in Fishers and routinely helped many local restaurants with not only designing and making custom knives for their chefs, but also keeping their blades sharp. If you don't know him, you need to. Partially because everyone we introduce him to become mesmerized and just taken by his knowledge and talent. So please give a warm welcome to Aric Geesaman. Hey,
wow,
bro.
Cameron, that was quite the intro. I'm not sure I deserve all that, but I appreciate it.
You do. You're amazing. And I will probably, you're going to say some things that I'm going to nod and pretend like I know exactly what you just said.
Anytime you talk shop, there's going to be somebody whose eyes glaze over, right?
There is. Before we get into the questions, I want to remind everybody that we kind of added the newness of doing giveaways. And you might have seen on my Instagram page that Aric has actually so kindly put himself out there from the standpoint of saying that he would like to be a sponsor for our little Facebook interview series. So thank you for that, Aric.
My pleasure.
He has offered to essentially give some of his talents of doing knife sharpening for one of our guests. So before we get started, can you just kind of talk about what that is and or what people have a chance to win?
Sure. So the basic knife sharpening process that I do is with whetstones, basically by hand. And it involves just evaluating the blade for any damage that needs to be repaired and thinning out and establishing any geometry that's not quite up to par, going through a series of abrasive grits, again on whetstones, to reshape the knife and make it more efficient, often than it was the day that it was bought, and then put a fresh edge on there, and off you go with a knife that feels brand new.
Awesome.
And if for some reason someone doesn't need their chef knives sharpened, they need, I don't know, a lawnmower blade or some, gardening loppers or pocket knives, hunting knives, something like that, we can work out what all those details are. I've got kind of a price range that I'm comfortable sharpening in for this giveaway. And I can work it out with whoever it is that ends up winning.
Okay. Well, we appreciate that. So for those that are viewing, towards the end, as we ask questions throughout the interview, towards the middle end, not sure when we're going to do it, but we will ask a question that is from an answer that Aric's actually given during this interview. So we highly recommend that you stay tuned and listen along so that you have the chance to win that giveaway. As a reminder, again, I notice more and more people are jumping on. So I just ask that you give us a thumbs up or say hi. If you know Aric or if you know me, just say a hi so that we know that you're there. We really appreciate all of our patrons and stuff. So, anyways, I'm going to start with the first question, which this is somewhat, we've lived in Fishers. We're kind of Fishers residents.
Yep.
And so every single guest kind of gets the same first question, which is, which we changed it a little bit because every single person said growth. So
Sure.
other than growth, what comes to mind when I mention the city of Fishers?
This isn't very different from that, but it's still, to me, the answer. And that's just a great place to grow up. I was going into second grade, so probably the same age as my oldest right now when we moved down here from Fort Wayne. And we moved into Blæds as it was being built. We were one of the first, maybe Adam remembers, maybe the second house on our cul-de-sac. The park I don't think wasn't there yet. There was still, believe it or not, there aren't very many of these in Fishers left. There was still a farm behind us, a whole farm, a field. We had a fence row where like wild grapes and blueberries grew, and we built tree houses, and we could ride our bikes to the park and to the library. And a lot of our friends lived in the same neighborhood. And our parents could make a phone call faster than we could ride our bike, that's for sure. But we could really go kind of anywhere. And, we felt generally safe there. Growing up, it was really a great place. There's so many things that we did. A place we've talked about before, and we're going to probably come back to later, Conner Prairie. I remember spending a lot of time there. One of my favorite string of memories as a kid was going behind Conner Prairie to like almost untouched White River to go fishing with our grandfather and our dad. It's probably my favorite place to ever go fishing. I'll never forget how much fun we had every summer when Grandpa would come down and we'd just kind of go back behind this spot on the White River because it's been part of Conner Prairie for so long that no one goes back there. And there's just this beautiful river back there. And just a great place to grow up. It really was.
I have to admit, I've been in this family for 20 years, more than 20 years. Let's just not talk about that. For almost 20 years. And honestly, I don't think I ever knew that you went behind Conner Prairie and went fishing.
Well, I don't know if people can still do it. I'm not trying to get anyone in trouble, but we did it.
No.
We did it, and it was amazing. Yeah. I mean, you had to hike through the woods. It wasn't just right there. It was back behind the place. You had to hike through the woods a little bit, and it's just this beautiful little riverbank right there. And on the other side was a farm that you couldn't even see. I mean, it was almost always corn. I don't remember it ever being soybeans. So you couldn't even see the farmhouse. You couldn't see anything on the other side. It was just endless farm and then just river up and down both banks, full of old forest trees and smallmouth, as it turned out. And that was what made it so fun. But
and even if anybody lives in Fishers or knows Fishers, knows Blæds. So it's
pretty big. You have to go around it. I mean, it takes up a lot of room.
A lot of people get lost. I have shown many a client.
Yeah.
And got lost.
I mean, I would wager to bet that Adam and I probably rode our bikes down every street in Blæds over the course of living there. But if you didn't do that, then I mean, you would, we knew how to get to basically any store that was north, south, east, or well, there wasn't really much on the west. But anything that was north, south, or east of there, we knew the shortcuts to get through to it as quick as possible on our bikes.
It's amazing. Yeah. It's one of my favorite neighborhoods. It still is selling like crazy hotcakes because it's the older part of. Oh yes.
Yeah, I mean, they were it was one street down from us. So yeah, we were in the actual same street. We were just a cul-de-sac off the street you lived on.
Okay, so for those, I know we're talking about Fishers a lot, and this is about Fishers, but I do want all of our neighbors to kind of get to know the Aric that I know, which is the artisan blades. It's the bladesmith. It's hard to say, actually.
It's a knife maker. That's not inaccurate.
Knife maker. It's way easier for me. And I have a knife. So to start off with, I do. What is Ash Blæds, and what made you want to become a bladesmith?
Yeah, so Ash Blæds is, I guess, kind of a labor of love more than anything. What made me want to start it was growing up. Our parents cooked. They were all really good cooks. We camped. Sometimes we fished. Sometimes we hunt. All of those things required a good knife, a sharp knife at the very least. And a dull knife would make any one of those activities kind of miserable when you went to go do it. If you've ever just struggled through preparing, cutting a pepper, you realize how just sort of defeated you feel when really it could just be the easiest thing in the world. So growing up, my dad kept our knives sharp. My mom kept her knives sharp. Everybody kept the knives sharp. And it was just kind of a thing that I understood was important to just keep that tool sharp, because a dull knife is kind of useless, to be honest. And then when I became an adult and I was, cooking constantly, I picked up a couple of cheap knives. I got a few hand-me-down knives, and then eventually was gifted a couple of nice factory-made but nice knives. And eventually I realized, like, these things are getting dull, and I'm going to have to learn how to sharpen them if I want them to remain functional. And so I set about to learn how to hand sharpen in order to do that. And over about 10 years of sharpening every knife I could get my hand on from, every family's house I went to, I would sit out on the table at the patio, and everyone would just pile their knives in. And I would sit there for like 3 hours and just sharpen every knife. This idea started kind of percolating in my head. Like, I don't know, maybe I could just make one of these things. We've been making them for like 3 million years as humans. So there's got to be something to it. I'm sure I could figure this out. And so it kind of started off as a hobby, as just something kind of tangible, because at the time I was working, I was no longer working in a lab. I was working in a kind of an office environment, sitting in a cubicle and looking over spreadsheets, and I just couldn't do it anymore. Like, my brain just struggles with that. And so I came up with this hobby, and the very first time that I put myself out there in front of other people was at a farmer's market in Greenfield. And my wife, my wonderful wife, who supported me through all of this and who kind of like really kicked me into it to do it. She was there with me at the very first farmer's market, and she saw how satisfied I looked after sharpening, the first 3 or 4 customers' knives. And I just happened to have a knife out there on display that someone else had already purchased. And I had somebody come up and he was like, "Can I buy that knife? That looks amazing. Did you make that? Like, I want that." I was like, "Oh, I can't sell you this knife because it's someone else's, but I will make you one. I would love to make you one." And just doing that for a little while. And then, our third one was on the way, and we were looking at daycare costs. And and ultimately Autumn was like, "Babe, just do it. Like, you love it. We'll figure it out. Stay home with the baby. Stay home with the kids. They're almost in grade school. Like, just do it." So that was kind of the birth of Ash Blæds. As far as Ash Blæds, as what it shows on your shirt, that was yeah. So I was looking into. It's a great shirt. I'm so glad that you wore that today. I was just looking into the etymology of the word blade across different cultures to kind of see, what could I come up with a logo that wasn't just my last name, because Geesaman Knives is a mouthful. That's my business partner, and I mean, I would have just named it after just me, So it was Greenfield Knives, but that's a little specific, geography. So what could we come up with? And so I found that the word ash, which is that AE that's on the middle of your shirt, which is the logo for my company, that this was the old Anglo-Saxon word, pronounced ash, for blade. That was the word blade, and it was pronounced ash. And it stood for any blade: the blade of an ash tree, the blade of a spear, the blade of a sword, the blade of a knife, whatever that was. Yeah, that's it right there on the screen.
So that's
I thought that was pretty cool.
For anybody that's just joining, I'm going to kind of hold you for a second. So this is his website. So you can see up in the corner, there's an AE. So right now he's kind of explaining that AE is I'm going to try to say this right, the Anglo-Saxon, Sexton? What is it?
Anglo-Saxon, yeah.
Saxton, see,
Yeah.
English. Ryan Allwert would be pointing his finger at me right now. AE, so that's the symbol essentially for blade, right?
Yeah, the word was said ash, but it meant blade. So that is the just call it the old English word blade. And then
Okay.
eventually they wrapped that ash into the word blade as it's spelled on your shirt. So it's really kind of like Inception for blade. It just says blade 4 times in 2 words.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. So
Okay,
yeah.
for all of you that don't know Aric, see, when he presented this to us as a family and showed me the AE. Now, mind you, he and his neighbor kind of talked about it. Like Eric's more the one that was like really doing them, but like his friend was part of it. And it was Aric and Aric, but it was Aric with an A and Aric with an E. And so I thought they were just really cool and made the AE.
So yeah, Kyle, yeah. Much easier, but at least you can say this word without my explanation, Brown. At least you can say this word without my explanation. That just happens to be the background for it, but Ash Blæds is at least pronounceable. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of like a happy accident. It was like, oh, that works on multiple levels. That's pretty awesome. Yeah. But, yeah, there you go. It's the word, the old English or the Anglo-Saxon word blade,
which is
the logo.
Yeah, I love it. After you told the story, I loved it even more just because it's just cool, you know?
Yeah. Fun.
So, okay, so you're sitting around going, I think I want to make knives. Where do you go to try to learn how to make a knife? Like,
yeah, so initially it was just a lot of research. So it was getting books on bladesmithing, getting books on blacksmithing, you know, going to the internet to learn as much about metallurgy as I could, material science. But ultimately, I did come across a class. There are a bunch of blacksmithing classes out of Conner Prairie, and that was kind of the segue to what we were talking about earlier. By then, I had already made a handful of knives. Most of them were terrible. I mean, my first like half a dozen knives are garbage, and they're all just shop knives, just scattered all over my shop. I use them to just cut random stuff. I knew I was never going to sell them, but I loved it. I loved every one of them. They were so fun. Every time I made one, I was like, yeah, I'm going to make the next one better. This one sucks, but the next one will be awesome. And I just kept doing that for like months, you know? But I did eventually find that at Conner Prairie, you can take, axe smithing and hammer making and knife making and all kinds of really cool blacksmithing classes. So that's what I did. I went and took I think it was a 3-day class at Conner Prairie, and I loved every minute of it. And honestly, I can't wait to go back and do another one.
What I have learned, I will say for at least all of our viewers, Aric has very much instilled in me that the motto that a dull knife is a dangerous knife. Like it's just not safe. Right? Can you speak on that from the standpoint, because you've done videos, and for anybody that is watching, you can see him on Instagram. He will take a knife. I should have had you grab like an apple or a I don't know, something. Text Autumn and tell her to bring him a grape.
How's he gonna do?
Autumn,
fetch me some grapes, baby.
Hold it in the air and go like, well, he just would have to like. Anyways, I digress.
Yeah.
People, just ignore me. Anyways, you do videos where like you're taking a knife and you're not even putting any pressure. You're literally laying it on the tomato and it slices straight through. It's kind of mesmerizing. Like to watch.
Zen-like. Yeah, I'm with you.
Can you talk about that?
A knife's sharpness is a measure of really 3 different things. Basically the design, the materials, and the process that was used to make it. And that's reflected in number 1, the heat treatment that knife undergoes. And that determines its elastic and plastic deformation limits. So how much it moves when it pushes into food, right? Because physics dictates that food pushes back, right? So
sure.
As how hard your knife, hi buddy. I got a little rat.
Hey, we got grapes.
I got some fruit delivery monsters here, which I can only cut maybe 1 or 2 grapes because Galen eats a lot of grapes. He's a little fruit monster.
Hey, buddy.
Got this one too, and an apple. Yeah, got these two. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Adam.
So it's partly determined by the heat treatment. So essentially, what kind of steel you have and how good that steel is will determine how much it can resist against the forces of the food. So that's number one, right? Because the knife is just a wedge. Number two is the geometry of your blade, how thin it is. Because I can sharpen an axe that you can shave your face with, but it will never cut an apple smoothly. An axe, no matter how sharp it is, can't slice through an apple because of how thick it is. And so ultimately, like the geometry, how thin your knife is, has a big
pull it down a little bit, like where it's behind your shirt, so that we have the sharp blade behind you. There you go.
Oh. Yeah. Well, it's just going to disappear. Anyway, so geometry is number two. And then number three, yeah, ultimately that comes down to the actual edge itself. So when you combine those three things, what you come up with is something that should be able to pass through most foods with very, very little effort. If it takes much effort, then you need to adjust one of those three things. Either you need to adjust the steel and how you treated it, or you need to adjust your design, the geometry, or you need to resharpen your knife. And so I want to see if I can peel a grape. Yeah, you probably can't see it, but we're going to peel a grape. Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
For anybody who would like to peel a grape, so we asked Aric. He doesn't have a cutting board, so that was a little bit hard. But
that was not the best. Early on, I did an experiment. I just gently kind of dulled a knife on a whetstone and went to cut an onion to see how many pounds, and I put it on a scale, on a digital scale, to max out, see how much effort it took to cut through an onion with a dull knife. I didn't do anything to the geometry, simply dulled it. And it was like 18 pounds. It may have spiked a little higher than that, but that was what I caught. 18 pounds of pressure to push through. And this was a cheap knife, not even very good geometry, and honestly, crap steel. And then I sharpened it, and it took less than 4 pounds. So it can make a significant difference in the literal effort, the physical effort that it takes for essentially your edge is the tip of a wedge. And if the tip of that wedge is 5 microns thick versus a 0.5 micron thick versus 20 microns thick, you just calculate basically what you don't have to calculate. It doesn't matter. You can feel it. You can feel how much easier, how much less pressure it takes to break through the surface of whatever that material is. So sharpening makes a world of difference. And people who haven't had their knives sharpened in like 10 years, they're almost invariably surprised at how sharp they are. In fact, most restaurants, when I go to a restaurant to sharpen for the very first time, I have to have them put all kinds of warnings up there, because almost every time, on the first time, someone cuts themselves bad enough that they have to leave work.
Okay, so you started kind of leading me into that next question, which is great. So what services do you offer to people? We've talked about a couple, but can you go through like all the different things that you offer so that, some people think, well, I'm not really a chef. Okay, sure. Actually, if you're cutting anything in your house, there's other things other than knives. Can you kind of go into that?
Definitely. So as far as what I make, I mostly focus on knives. Kitchen knives in particular, just because most people use that more than they use anything else. As much as I'd love to say I use my camp knife all the time, I don't. I go camping a couple times a year, right? But cooking, I use my chef knife every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. So that just happens to be what I focus on the most, because I think that's kind of the most bang for your buck. But I make pocket knives, not folding, but little full tang, basically pocket knives that can go in a little hard plastic thermoform sheath that you can stick in your pocket. I make belt knives, I make hunting knives, I make fillet knives, although that's kind of a kitchen knife. I do all that. So that's all the kind of the custom realm. And then the sharpening realm is independent of that. Although it's worth noting, if I made a knife, I will sharpen it for free forever. In fact, I'll do any work that needs to be redone on that knife for free forever. It's a lifetime warranty. It won't cost you anything to bring your knife to me, have it fixed, have it sharpened, have it repaired, whatever. But anything else, yeah, there's a fee for sharpening it, of course. But it's not just knives. Yeah, I sharpen lawnmower blades and axes and kitchen loppers. I've sharpened hair cutting shears. Is really expensive hair cutting shears. Again, I do it all on whetstones by hand, so I can really dial in the edge of each individual kind of bladed instrument that needs it. And then I also do restorations. So people bring me like, hey man, this is my grandmother's knife from like 60 years ago and the handle's fallen off or whatever. Can you fix this? So, or, a hatchet or an axe or whatever. So I do all kinds of restorations also for people if they're interested in that, and trying to get as much out of maybe a family heirloom as they can, because I think that's worth it. That's part of the reason that I do what I do, is because I want someone, if you're going to buy something like this, I see no reason that it shouldn't last you a lifetime, and that, your kids, if you have any, or grandkids or nieces or nephews, or just someone down the line won't take this thing and be like, yeah, I want that now. And just go on down the line. I see no reason that our tools can't be that way, that they need to be just like thrown away and rebought when they can last for like 2 generations or longer. Yeah. So I'm here to help facilitate that with other tools that already exist that people want to make sure they can last longer and longer and longer.
For some of you that I noticed some more people are getting on, so that's good. Make sure that you share the link. If you want people to know about Ash Blæds, the biggest thing that we ask is to share this video on Facebook so that other people can get to know the awesomeness of Ash Blæds and Aric. You'd be amazed at how many people, don't even know that knife sharpening or knife making is, that there's somebody so local that it's just a really neat asset to have. And then secondly, make sure to give a thumbs up or a like so that we know that you're here. And then we're also going to still be doing that giveaway for some knife sharpening towards the end. So thank you for keeping tuned. I want people to kind of understand, and I don't know, I didn't prep you for this, so I'm sorry if you have to turn around and grab some stuff, but
oh no,
I know. The question is, what is the process when someone decides they want to kind of have you make a custom knife? But I also want you mentioned, because we talked to you before we go live, that you have some knives behind you that are in processes. But I think maybe it would be cool to show people kind of, I don't know if you have some of them in a process of where they're at the stage, but then you kind of maybe show that too, because it's neat to see. So
yeah, sure. So really the process starts first, obviously, just by contacting me, whether you email me or you go and find me on Instagram or Facebook, whatever it is, just get a hold of me. And we can talk about all the options, whether this is a gift for someone, something that you want, whether you know any kind of specifics, or you need me to walk you through it, whether you're just like, hey man, just make me something awesome. Whatever that is, just get a hold of me. We'll talk through all the details. If you're local and you want to come out to the shop once everything seems, steady, then I'll be welcoming people back out here. But people are welcome to come out here and just kind of see what all goes on into this. Everything from the giant slabs of local hardwoods that I get from India Urban Hardwood, from basically trees that get rescued, that come down in storms, that were just burned or thrown through a wood chipper or whatever, that to the actual bars of steel that I get, I hammer forge or stock removal out of. And hi, you coming out to say hi? No? Okay. That was my third one. He's feeling a little shy. So the process begins with a conversation. And then from there, we kind of touched on this earlier. You can come out here. It's fine. It's just hand camera. We can so we touched on some of those elements earlier, that basically it's design, materials, and process. So what you're looking for determines perhaps what kind of steel we use, and whether that steel starts out in a round bar that needs to be hammer forged into shape, or that steel starts out on a relatively thin bar that I can just kind of cut out to shape. The shaping is determined by basically the material needs and the design itself. So I think Hey kiddo, can you get me you see that big round bar over there? Just be real careful. Grab me that thing. Yeah, that's the one. Ooh, that grating metal noise. Everybody loves that.
Ooh.
You know, so you can't obviously grind a knife out of a 1-inch bar of steel. You can only hammer forge this. So if this happens to be the right steel for the knife that somebody needs, then we talk about hammer forging. If it's something else, then it's something else. That's fine. There's multiple ways to get through the process of shaping a knife. Once it's shaped, I've got a couple back here. Once the knife has been shaped, this one happens to have been hammer forged. Then it goes through a heat treatment process. Hey, buddy, that's going to be a little bit too loud. Okay, you can stand quietly if you wish. It's in the heavy bag. It either once it's shaped, it goes through a heat treatment process, and that is determined by the steel choice. That's not anything you guys need to worry about. It's just what I need to worry about to make sure that I get the most out of the steel possible.
So is there a difference as you're talking? So for the people that don't understand, can you explain kind of, there's hammer forged, there's Damascus, there's like what, because I know for me originally, I thought I wanted, which is what I got because you listened to me and made me what I wanted. But mine is a Damascus.
I listen.
You do. And it's funny because I love the Damascus, but now that I've learned more, I kind of want one that's not a Damascus. So do you even have examples, or like, can you say what the difference is between those?
Yeah, so I think it's easy enough to break it into just a couple of categories. And they do have differences, and those differences do matter, or they can matter. So every step of the process, there's some kind of you're going to be giving up some kind of compromise. You're going to be giving up one thing in order to get another. The simplest steel that I work with is literally that. It's simple carbon steel. So something like this knife right here, this big chef knife, is a hammer forged out of a simple carbon steel. It takes a phenomenal edge. It forges really well. You can see it's this kind of dark grayish color. This is a patina that can be formed on it. It takes an extremely sharp edge that's really easy to sharpen and keep sharp. But it can rust, so that's something that you have to be prepared to take care of. And then there are stain resistant steels, which are ones like this, which is what most people are kind of used to. This is really not going to change color throughout the life of the knife, as long as, again, you care for it. And then there are tool steels, which are going to lean more towards one thing or another. Maybe they're going to be a little tougher. Maybe they're going to hold their edge a little longer, but they're going to be a little harder to sharpen. But these are kind of specific use steels. So this happens to be kind of a thick boning knife for somebody who's going to maybe be, butchering out larger animals. And if they're going to make contact with bones or something, you might be worried with a simple carbon steel that you might do some damage to the edge of the tip. So a tool steel is a good answer to that. And then there are more exotic steels, something like a Damascus. Oh, yeah, I keep going the wrong way. Something like a Damascus knife, where Damascus isn't really the right word. It's pattern welded is the right word. People use Damascus just because that's kind of a colloquialism for it. But pattern welded, where you take the first two, stain resistant and carbon, and you layer them up, and under heat and pressure, you essentially weld them together permanently. And then through the process of making the knife, this pattern comes out. And this pattern is sort of like a fingerprint. You can't really ever make more than one of exactly this. I don't really make more than one of any of my knives anyways, unless somebody specifically asks me to make their own knife the same way. Another version of it. But at any rate, you couldn't with something like a Damascus. It's really, really unique in that regard. So those are kind of the metal choices. And then again, whether it's cut out a thin piece of metal or it's hammer forged out, really just depends on which material I have and how that material has to be handled in order to be turned into a knife-shaped object. And then from there, it's heat treating, and then it's using other tools, files and grinders and stuff like that to remove the excess material that's not that's not needed to make sure that you end up with a really efficient tool. And then the handles, for most of the handles that I make for just like knives, you know, they just kind of go up on the website. I really do try to focus on local hardwoods. And again, these are mostly woods that are sustainably harvested, you know, but they're coming from some pretty cool places, like the grounds of what used to be called the Indianapolis Museum of Art. I have some from the Meridian Hills Country Club. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, you know, so I got stuff coming from kind of all over Indy that we can put into a handle. And then also you could supply me with something that's personal to you, and I can make it from that. So something like this knife that has flowers cast in resin in this handle. So, you know, say you want to do an anniversary present for your wife, and you still got some dried flowers from your wedding or something, bring them to me. I'll cast them in resin, and I'll slap them in part of that handle. Or you've got someone's old work shirt, your grandpa's old work shirt or something, or, you know, I can cut it into strips and I can form into basically an indestructible handle material that can be put into a handle for a knife. Or you've got I got a bunch of barnwood from people's family farms. They've been in their family for 200-300 years or whatever. And they're like, hey, this maple tree from my grandparents' farm fell down. Can you make a handle out of it? Yeah, hell yeah, I can make a handle out of it. Like, bring it here and I'll take care of it from here. So I can personalize it in a lot of different ways. Everything from the design where you sit down and you're like, nah, I only want the blade to be this big. This big is too big. I only want that big. That's fine. We can do that, you know. I specifically want it to have this kind of finish on it. We can do that, you know. So I guess some of it's going to come down to my artistic interpretation of what they're saying. But I mean, sometimes it even starts with a sketch where I draw out and I watercolor in the handle material and everything so they can get as clear of a picture of what they're ordering as I can give them. And then, or again, they can just tell me to make something awesome and I'll just make it awesome. It's up to you. You know, it's as hands-on or as hands-off as you want it to be. And it's everything in between.
That's really awesome. I think that it's a lot more than just making a knife, right? Like, you do so many different things. And I guess I'm always amazed when you post some of these knives that you're making, especially for even some of the local chefs, which, you know, I like to hit on, because if anybody owns a restaurant, like a small restaurant or something, you know, Aric, you know, you've gone in and what, I know there's a couple chefs even here in Fishers, you know, like Provisions, you know, that is in the test kitchen. So you made him a custom knife. And
it was his great grandfather's hammer. He said, hey, I've got this old hammer. It's my great grandfather's handle, a hammer. Do you think you could wrap it into a handle for a knife? You know, because he's a chef. And so, yeah, I was able to cut the handle off of the head and then stabilize that material so that it wouldn't, you know, warp or bring in water or oil or whatever throughout the use of the knife. It's a vacuum impregnated liquid resin that hardens over time and it fills in all the gaps and stuff. So I was able to resin harden it and then just cut it really nicely in half, and it fit just perfectly over the size of knife that he needed over that handle. And so he's got this really nice, it's actually very similar to this knife right here. But it happened to be a hickory handle from his grandfather's old hammer. And then I went and put a new hickory handle on his grandfather's old hammer because I couldn't stand to give him just the head of a hammer back, because then you can't ever use it as a hammer. So I put a new handle on that. So he got the knife and he got the hammer.
So if you're at the test kitchen in Fishers, for anybody, and you see Adam at Provisions, he's like the three that are in there, ask him to see the knife, because sure as heck I did.
Yeah. Well, it's not there right now, you know, due to COVID-19. But as soon as they open it back up, yeah.
But I believe it'll be there. And said, you know, hey, you know, I'd love to see the knife that Aric made you, and it was sitting right there, and he lifted it up and showed me. And so it's interesting to see chefs, because we now know chefs, they carry it around with them.
Right next door to him, Chef Carlos at Little Dumplings, he has one of my knives also.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He's got a raindrop Damascus with like a Mallet burl or something like that, and brass liners.
Okay. I haven't
Really beautiful
met him.
knife.
The few times that we've been in there, he hasn't been there. So he's one that I want to meet
Yeah,
because
he needs his days off because he works like 14-hour days or whatever. But
not.
he's a great guy. Also, he lives in Fishers. He lives just
Oh,
north of. Yeah.
oh, yeah, we'll have to get with him. But
Yeah.
okay, so if anybody has any questions, I'll kind of put that out there too. I know we've talked a lot, but if you have questions for Aric as well, put them below. I'd love to kind of hear your questions or um, inquiries, so to speak. I know a lot about Aric, so I forget, kind of some of these things because I already know it, and I'm trying to ask as many questions as I can that can kind of help you see who he is and what he's about. But so how can people support Ash Blæds, either by purchasing or not purchasing? Like, what does that look like for Ash Blæds, or how can we support you?
So, I mean, obviously, buying a knife or having me sharpen something for you or do a restoration, monetarily, those are the obvious things, right? But let's just say beyond that, if somebody's they don't have the money right now to invest in a family heirloom, they don't need their knives sharpened. That's okay. I understand that. There are a couple of things that you can think about. There are a lot of artisans in the area that just no one even knows exists. And there are lots of things that go on where someone maybe could look for an artisan to help either educate to a group of students or to just a talk. You just want to bring someone in to talk about creativity. What is the process of design material and process look like? How does an artisan go about their business to help people maybe rethink the way that they think about things? If there are, I was right before all this kicked off, I was planning on doing some interactive First Friday events where basically hammer forge things on site. Knives take a little while to hammer forge, but you can hammer forge little bottle openers, and if I have it, I don't know, if I got some on hand, I hammer forged a ring out in
Oh, cool.
fairly short order, Makume Gane ring. There's just little cool things like that show that not all art is static and stationary. That there are lots of things that can be done interactive in an interactive way. And you can talk to people about it while they do it. So if you know about events, again, they could kind of utilize an artisan, holler at me. I'd love to come talk to people. If you work with with schools in the area and high schoolers need somebody to talk to that aren't that isn't just kind of like a corporate job or whatever, somebody who's doing something a little bit different, I can clean up my language a little bit and come talk to kids, whatever it is. I'm here to help educate the community that there are a lot of people like me out there. Whether they're carving wooden spoons or they're making beautiful pottery or, they're hammer forging tools or whatever. There's a lot of artisans that are trying to add to the culture of our community. And I just ask that people think about that. People remember that when you go to make a purchase, think, is there somebody locally who does this, who could supply me with this? That it's not just like, someone locally does it, but they really just have it made in, halfway across the world and then sell it through whatever interface or something. There could be people locally who physically do what you need. And it may really be worth your investment to help support that. And then of course there's social media, all this stuff, Instagram, Facebook. If you think you know anybody who could use services like mine, shoot it out there. Every single person that comes here, either to order a knife or have me sharpen their knives, what have you, that's all positively impactful for me. And all of our money goes right back into our community. The margins aren't huge on this. It's expensive and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to do it just right. And what's left over basically goes back into our community, just where everyone else lives. And so, just think about that. Think about the artisans that may be around you that can kind of fill in some of those little gaps, things that you need, or who can bring some interactivity or communication or education to the broader populace. Kind of like what you mentioned earlier. When I go to an event, 90% of the people there have no idea that there's anyone like me out there, or that I exist here in their community. They don't know that we are here. And it's kind of hard. I don't have a brick and mortar. I work out of my garage so that when my kids get off the bus, I can be here for them, which means I don't have a physical presence out there in very many places. So, it's sometimes it can be difficult to get the word out. So don't take it for granted that you can share that you can get the word out, because it matters a lot to people like us.
It does. And I even tell people, hey, if you've bought a knife at sur le table, I don't know how to say it, sur le table.
Yeah, solid.
That just consider one of Aric's knives. I'm not going to say that, you can't go to any of those places, right? And get a knife. And especially it might be a little bit less expensive, but if you really
it will be
into it,
it will be.
You can make it, you really can make it personalized, like you said, So
the idea, I mean, the word custom is not in there as a buzzword, and the word artisan is not in there as a buzzword. It is me and my busted up hands doing this work right here by myself. It's not, these are not, again, these are not like buzzwords. This is literally what I do every single day.
I don't see any Band-Aids on your hands right now.
No, they're healed because I've been doing a lot of hand sanding for the last week or so on handles. So all my wounds get to heal during the hand sanding days, and then they come back when my forging and grinding days.
Because I wonder if some people will have this question. Nobody's asking questions, so I'm just going to keep asking questions.
Sure.
How long from beginning to end does it take for you to make a knife?
Okay, so there's the theoretical and the practical. I can do a knife in about 3 days and do a good job if I do nothing else.
Okay.
If I wake up in the morning and I work for 12, 15 hours straight on one knife, I can probably get it done in 3 days.
Okay.
But that's not
really
how it normally works. I don't want, So realistically, from start to finish, it's generally between 3 and 5 weeks as I work on other knives, because, I try to make them in a batch. So I'm going to, I try to, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 knives behind you that I made all out of the same steel. They're going to go through the same heat treat process, the same temperatures for the same amount of time. So I try to kind of batch knives together so that I can try to make it as efficient as possible.
Okay.
If you were to order a knife today, when would it be delivered? It's usually 6 or 8 months, but I have spots open for people who are like, hey, my so-and-so's birthday is in 2 months. Do you think you can sneak me in? And if there's a similar knife, sometimes I try to make a little room in there. Or if there's an inventory knife that's already half built, somebody could just claim it and off they go. So I try to be flexible in there. But I put my custom orders first, certainly. Okay. But it's between probably 4 and 6 months right now.
Okay. So you do have some knives that do go up on your website that if somebody doesn't have a custom knife, we'll put up the website again. It's just ashblæds.com. And it is the A and the E. You don't for normal text, you just put BLAEDS. So it's ashblæds.com, and you can go look at a bunch of his pictures and all sorts of stuff. I'm going to say I really appreciate kind of you explaining everything. What I would like to say is that it could be giveaway time. So kind of ebbed and flowed with people joining and getting on and off. And so for those of you that are still tuned in, I will say for the most part, I hate to say this, but someone has to be a local person. Because could they ship you knives?
They can if they want to, wrap it up and pay for shipping it. Being a giveaway, I'd rather not be out $20 in shipping on top of the labor. So I would prefer it to be someone local. If it's not, I'm not really gonna make that big of a stink over it. It's okay. I understand.
We're gonna try to say that it's local. So if you've been watching during the whole show, we have asked a few questions, and we've kind of changed as we've started the show. Now this is our, I don't know how many we've done. This is our 7th show, Adam, on the
lucky number 7.
Yeah, lucky number 7. I don't know if it's lucky. My favorite number 6. Adam's favorite.
I don't have a favorite number.
So anyway, so if you're just tuning in, we're going to do a giveaway. Hopefully you can answer the question because it is based on the conversation that we've had for this last hour. So what you need to do is we're going to ask the question, and then below you're going to answer the question, and the person who answers it first is the winner. Now, this is a live video, so, if nobody answers, well, I don't know what to do. That's never happened.
Then it's you. It defaults to you.
Oh, wow.
Granted, like I sharpen yours for free anyways.
You were in there? Yeah.
You can nominate someone. You can just,
Yeah, I'll give it to somebody.
pick a viewer out of the hat.
Right. So, Aric and I talked a little bit about his logo. So this is a logo focused question. So what does the AE logo stand for in Ash Blæds? Again, I thought it was something different to kind of give a little bit of information, but it's one of those. So we'll let people kind of answer that question. Do you have any, is there any knives to your side that you haven't shown yet that you would like to show? Or did you show?
As far as everything to my side, I guess they've all kind of come up due to the materials or whatever. And most of them are available on the site, as it turns out. So just holler at me if you need something that will just absolutely zip through, whatever.
It looked like you had almost like a cleaver. Is that what?
Yeah.
What
This is
kind
kind of a Chinese style cleaver or an extra tall Nakiri. It's tall. It's very, very thin.
There you go.
And that's kind of hard to tell, but you can see how very, very thin that is. And yeah, this is the kind of knife that just kind of like zips right through stuff.
That's really fun.
Yeah, it is really fun. It makes cooking so enjoyable. That's the idea. Like, cooking can be so obnoxious when you have just a dull knife.
Right.
But a sharp, well-made knife, especially if it has a personal connection to you, it really, I think, makes it so much more enjoyable. This is kind of what the skeletonized handle of a hidden tang knife like this looks like before you put the handle material on it.
Do you drill holes for a reason, or is that just to lighten it, or what is that for?
Yeah, it's a good question. It does multiple things. So typically I only put 2, maybe sometimes 3 pins in there, but then otherwise the extra holes serve as like an epoxy bridge, like a reservoir. So then on the inside of the knife material, I counter drill holes in there as well. So then the epoxy runs through all 3 pieces in one kind of contiguous little like plug that to help it really grab onto the handle beyond the mechanical with the pins kind of holding it there. Then it gets a really nice grip on the handle. So that's one of these. And then let's see. This is the start of a hidden tang handle, where this kind of goes down into a handle like this, where you don't see any of the handle material as it goes through. So again, this is the hidden tang versus full tang, where you can see the handle as the steel as it moves through from the blade all the way through to the handle. So just 2 different kind of constructions, really. Okay. They do adjust the weight, so those little holes do. Obviously, a little bit of epoxy between there is less weight than the steel that was removed. But ultimately, also hidden tang knives are generally lighter in weight overall than full tang knives because they're mostly wood, as opposed to full tang that has steel throughout much of it. So it does adjust the balance of the knife a little bit, and so oftentimes it'll look like a hidden tang. Aesthetically, it'll look like a hidden tang handle is a little bit bigger than what you think it should be, but that's partly to help physically balance it. Even if that means it feels aesthetically a little imbalanced, I want to make sure that the function is where it needs to be. But I try to make sure it's a little bit of both, as close to both as I can.
But Aric, I always love talking with you because I always learn stuff. I learned more again today, and yet I listen to you explain knives over and over again. If you are still watching, where you can find Aric is he has, well, you say, where all can they find you?
Yeah, so my website, www.ashblæds.com. And that's where you can contact me. You can look through pictures of other work that I've done in case you're curious. Again, really options are kind of open. There's some, information just about me on there. There's a really cool video. If Grant is still on there, there's a really cool video from 12 Stars Media on my homepage that I absolutely love. I'm so grateful for them for putting that video together. At least go watch that video. If you do nothing else, at least go watch that video because it's great. And then my Instagram account, which is just, at Ash Blæds. So I try to post there, every day or two. I have a couple of live videos. I'm going to try and start doing a knife care, a series of knife care videos. I'll post to Instagram, and then if I can get them cleaned up, I'll post them out on my website and maybe on YouTube or something like that. I do have a YouTube channel, but it's not that active. I just have the one awesome 12 Stars video on there. And then I have Facebook, which you guys have linked to. So people can reach me there also. And
perfect.
Yeah.
So for anybody that's still still tuned in, I guess, thank you so much for watching our interview with
Thanks, everyone.
Yes, absolutely. Next, or on Thursday, we're interviewing Austin Bowman. He is a local Fishers resident. He went to high school in Fishers, currently still lives in Fishers, and then also is a loan officer. So we work with him from a business standpoint, but he's just one of those guys that makes me laugh every time I talk to him, and just has been through a lot of life's trials. And so we're going to kind of dig into some of those trials. He actually had a near-death experience with his son. And so we've asked him if he would speak on that and how the community really rallied around him and came and kind of supported him. And so he's going to talk about that. So I'm really excited about that interview. If you don't know who we are, like I said, I'm Conner Geesaman. I'm a team of 3 for Geesaman Homes. You can find us at geesamanhomes.com as well as Facebook and Instagram. And if you just search Geesaman Homes, pretty much we're the only Geesaman out there that's Geesaman Homes because it's such a unique,
a very common name.
I know. I don't blame you at all for coming up with a different name like Ash Blæds, because every time I say Geesaman Homes, people, I have to kind of spell it, but it is what it is.
It raises a lot of questions though.
It does, but I couldn't come up with anything else. I'm not that creative. So it's Geesaman Homes. Anyways, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Make sure to check out Ash Blæds on his different social media and his website and try to help support him. And we really appreciate you guys supporting our channel as well as Get to Know Your Neighbors. If you have any ideas of who we should interview, I know, Aric, we've kind of talked about this, so I didn't ask that question per se. But before we leave, for the last question, I kind of want to wait till the very end because I've asked this on each one. From a real estate standpoint, we love to hear what people love about their homes. And so what is your favorite part about your home and why?
Probably already know this, but it's my kitchen because that's where I make all the food that I feed my family with, who are the most important people in my life. My friends and my family are the people that bring the most value to my life. And so really it's the kitchen. I don't love everything about my kitchen. It's just that it's my favorite room because that's where I feed the people that are the most important to me.
Well, and you do make amazing food and dishes. So we appreciate that because I get to eat it.
What do you guys? Yeah.
I know. Well,
cooks all around.
No, I appreciate it. Anyways, thank you so much, Aric. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And you guys all have
everybody. Thanks.
a wonderful Tuesday. Bye.